The unlikely encounter, Darius Leonard's shocking Easter morning. What do you do when fate places a complete stranger in your path, someone whose presence seems so familiar, yet so completely out of place? For NFL linebacker Darius Leonard, this question would become a reality one peaceful Easter morning, when a random act of kindness spirals into an emotional revelation that would change his life forever. On a quiet morning in his small hometown of Lakeview, South Carolina, Darius Leonard didn't expect his simple attempt to help someone stranded by the roadside to lead him down an unexpected emotional path that would stir up forgotten memories and buried pain. As the sun began to peek over the horizon, casting its warm golden glow across the sleepy town, Darius cruised through the quiet streets of his childhood neighborhood. He had just arrived back home after a whirlwind NFL season, a long way from the place where his story had started. The morning was calm, with only a handful of cars parked along the street, and the occasional figure strolling by, either on their way to church or to some other early morning destination. It was the kind of day that made time seem to stand still, a stark contrast to the hectic pace of Darius's professional life. He had no plans beyond attending the family Easter egg hunt later that afternoon, but as fate would have it, the universe had something different in mind. While driving along a familiar tree-lined road, Darius noticed a lone car stranded on the side, its hazard lights blinking weakly in the morning sun. A woman stood next to it, wearing a white church dress, her arms crossed tightly, clearly frustrated by her situation. Something about her appeared out of place. Her Sunday best didn't belong on the side of a road next to a car in need of assistance. Without a second thought, Darius slowed his vehicle and pulled over. A deep-seated sense of responsibility tugged at him. He couldn't ignore someone in need, not on a morning like this. The NFL linebacker stepped out of his car, popped the trunk, and grabbed the necessary tools to fix the flat tire. As he approached the woman, he offered her a reassuring smile. "Looks like you could use some help," he said, his tone light but genuine. The woman, initially startled, looked up. Her expression softened, and relief washed over her face as she recognized the tall figure approaching her. "I'm so glad you stopped," she said, a mixture of surprise and gratitude in her voice. "I wasn't sure anyone would." Darius smiled back, setting to work on the flat tire. "You're in good hands," he said, his focus quickly shifting to the task at hand. As he knelt down to begin loosening the lug nuts, the woman broke the silence with a quiet voice. "I almost called my husband," she murmured, her voice wavering. "But he's been under the weather. Actually, it's more serious than that. He had an accident," she added softly, holding something back. Darius paused for a moment, sensing the gravity of her words. This wasn't just about a flat tire. He could feel the weight of the situation. It seemed there was much more going on beneath the surface. Her tone hinted at deeper struggles, and he wondered just what she had been through. In a quiet effort to help, Darius shifted his focus back to the tire, knowing he couldn't change the circumstances but hoping to alleviate at least one of her burdens. His hands worked efficiently, but all the while, he remained aware of her presence, of her quiet grief. After a few moments of silence, the woman introduced herself, her voice softer now. "I'm Miss Isbell," she said with a small smile, trying to lighten the atmosphere. "I didn't expect my morning to take such a turn." Darius's hands paused briefly as her name triggered a faint memory, but he couldn't place it. It was like a voice from the past, a whisper that eluded him. Still, he focused on tightening the bolts, moving steadily with each motion, all while listening intently to her story. She told him about the Easter celebration she had been looking forward to, how she had planned to enjoy a day of church and family, a time of peace and connection. Despite the frustration of the moment, there was a warmth in her voice as she spoke about her family, her husband and children. Even in the face of difficulty, there was an undeniable sense of hope in her words. The conversation flowed with ease, but then, out of nowhere, Miss Isbell said something that took Darius completely by surprise. "You've come so far, Darius," she said softly, her words catching him off guard. A chill ran through him. The way she said his name felt deeply personal, as though she had known him all along. It wasn't just a casual observation, it was something more. She spoke to him like someone who had followed his journey, someone who believed in him long before he had achieved any measure of success. "Do you ever visit Lakeview High anymore?" she asked, a hint of nostalgia in her voice. Darius froze, his heart racing. How did she know about his high school? He hadn't mentioned it. He hadn't even thought about it in years. The familiarity in her question rattled him. He stared at her for a moment, trying to place her face, but nothing came to mind. "No, not really," he said slowly, still grappling with the unexpected flood of emotions. He hadn't thought much about his past since he left Lakeview, but now it was all rushing back, the hardships, the sacrifices, and the memories that he had long buried. The woman looked at him, her eyes filled with empathy. "I'm glad you made it out," she continued. "I know it wasn't easy for you. You had a tough road. But I'm so proud of you." Darius felt a lump form in his throat, the weight of her words crashing down on him. She didn't just know his story, she understood it. It felt as though she had walked beside him through every challenge, every setback. And for a moment, Darius couldn't hold back the surge of emotions that threatened to overwhelm him. The memory of his past flooded his mind, bringing with it the pain of growing up in Lakeview, a small town with few opportunities and even fewer ways out. His family had struggled, and Darius had often felt trapped in a place where dreams seemed distant, like stars in a far-off sky. But even in the face of adversity, there had always been that quiet drive to succeed, to prove that he was meant for more. The toughest blow had come when he lost his older brother Khan. Khan had been more than a sibling, he had been Darius's role model, his protector, the person he looked up to when everything else seemed uncertain. Losing Khan was a pain that never quite went away. It left a hole in his heart, one that nothing could fill. The memories of Khan's laughter, the quiet nights spent wondering what could have been, and the guilt that came with not being able to save him still haunted Darius to this day. He often found himself questioning the path his life had taken, wondering if Khan would have been proud of him. That fateful night, when Khan had gone out to a nightclub and never returned, still felt like a scar, raw and unhealed. Darius had stayed home that night, filled with a sense of nervous anticipation. He never expected it to be the last time he'd see his brother. And now, as Miss Ispel's words echoed in his mind, Darius couldn't help but think of everything that had been lost, everything he had been forced to leave behind. But the pain wasn't the only thing Miss Ispel's words stirred. They reminded him of something else, the people who had always believed in him, even when he had doubted himself. It was as though this encounter had awakened a long-forgotten part of his soul. Darius Leonard had come so far. But that morning, on the side of a quiet road in Lakeview, he realized he wasn't just helping a stranger. In many ways, she was helping him find peace, and perhaps, healing.